Today, I spoke to one of the most senior figures in America's intelligence community, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. I asked him first whether he thinks Europe and Britain should be attacking the Islamic State in Syria as well.
I do, and I think when you look at the nature of this threat, our oceans or distance are not going to protect us. So if you look at what happened in Australia, a long way away, they had a cell of about 14 individuals who had been communicating with ISIL leadership, were told to stay in Australia and kidnap randomly people to cut their heads off. We see efforts to do that in Europe. We see efforts to do it in England. We see certainly efforts to do it in the United States and Canada. So this is a threat that is knocking on our door. And the longer it looks that ISIL can push back on the West by not a wholehearted effort, I believe that pipeline of Western passport-holding individuals will continue to grow in that particular region. That's dangerous for all of us.
I mean, the difficulty, in a sense, is picking out ISIL as the enemy, given that there's so many other currents in the region. Clearly the Turks worried about the Kurds, others worried about inadvertently helping the Assad regime.
If we don't do the small and effective now, we're going to have big and ugly later. And so I argue that the more unified that we can be between our European partners and the United States, the better off we're going to be. We know that we can't do this by remote control. We are going to have to go after them where they both finance themselves, train themselves, equip themselves. That's Eastern Syria. It is hard to argue that we can just deal with it in Western Iraq. If we don't deal with both, they don't see that border. The only people that see that border are Western nations. They don't recognize the border. They don't operate as if it's a border. It's all ungoverned space. It's a huge space, about the size of the state of Indiana in the United States, that they now control in one way or another, and have freedom of movement, and again, they have the ability to train, finance, and equip. That makes it dangerous for all of us, and that's why we shouldn't look at the border either. We ought to attack them where we find them.
Are you surprised by the reticence you're encountering in this country?
You know, no. I think strength of leadership is important. I don't care what the endeavor. And I think the United States has been a little slow to react to this problem as well. And I think if your best and strongest neighbor is not all in, it's pretty hard to be all in a fight this difficult. So I hope we've crossed that threshold, that we are now ready, I think, together to understand that Britain needs to be with us and we need to be with Britain, and certainly across Europe as well. But we have to do this together if we're going to be impacted.
And what about Turkey, obviously right up on the border, over the border from Kobani?
You know, certainly causing problems. I think we ought to have an adult conversation with Turkey about their status in NATO, and just have the conversation. You can't have a threat as serious as this is to Europe, to all the NATO partners, and not live up to that Article 5 agreement that if you attack one, you attack them all. And so Turkey's been very, very disappointing. I think we're going to need to be tougher with Turkey, that they need to understand that if you're going to be a full NATO member, that comes with the serious responsibilities of helping push back when you have a threat as large and as growing as ISIL is in the region.
You talked about the way ISIL has managed to spread its tentacles around the world. Obviously, the internet has been a key part of that. And we've seen these dreadful videos of people apparently being murdered by IS. Do you think there's anything that can be done about that, the use of those videos?
I mean, I do. I think that we all have capabilities, and we should, again, do this in partnership with both Europe and the United States when it comes to our ability to take down those sites, to make it difficult for them to use their propaganda tool to both recruit individuals and money. And so what they're doing an exceptionally good job of using social media as their marketing arm to the rest of the world. And they're targeting English speakers, certainly German speakers, French speakers, specifically to those populations. They're working on their sense of separation, if you will, from society in their particular home nations, and it's working. and it's working at a rate that should alarm us all. And there are things that we can do, but I think we need to march out. I wouldn't wait too long to get after their ability to spread their message of hate.
Because, of course, the irony is this data they're putting up, and we know that apparently there's some concern about that, also gives us information about them, who they are, what they're doing. Sure. There has been this person who's appeared in the videos with a British accent. Some people have called him Jihadi John, apparently involved in the killings. Do you believe that we do know who he is now?
I believe that there is a high likelihood that his identity has been confirmed.
And why wouldn't that be published at this stage?
Well, I think, again, you want to have some advantage as you would move forward. So just as our intelligence services don't want to tell you everything that is known, and the same for this. This has some strategic value of keeping that information at least with law enforcement and intelligence services until it's advantageous to change that. And again, not everything needs to be on the front page of the paper to be effective. And I argue, as my job as chairman of the intelligence community in the United States, it allows us to make sure that everything is being operated correctly and the information that should be shared is and shouldn't be, shouldn't be.
Congressman Rogers also talked to me about the growing threat of cyber terrorism, saying the idea that the United States is routinely spying on Europe simply isn't true. And he said that Edward Snowden's claims are misleading. You can see that online at skynews.com.